fight coach mocks the cleaning lady on the mat. But what she does next leaves everyone in shock. Before we get into today's story, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I'd really love to know how far these stories are reaching. And if you enjoy stories about love, overcoming adversity, and heartwarming endings, make sure to subscribe to the channel. That way, not only will you never miss a new story, but you'll also help this channel grow and reach more people who, like you, love this kind of content. Ready? Today's story is something special. Atlanta, summer of 2024. The afternoon sun streams through the wide windows of the Blake Performance Center like a hot, golden blade, lighting up the white mats with intensity, as if spotlights were shining on a stage. The sounds of grunts, sharp thuds, and short commands echo through the glass and steel hallways, setting the pace of a place built for the strong. It's a winner's environment. Elite athletes train under pressure, sweating for titles, status, and medals. And among them, almost invisible to distracted eyes, walks Zoe Carter. Zoe is 31. Her deep brown skin carries both radiance and strength. Her light brown eyes observe everything calmly, but they hold more stories than anyone could guess. Her body is strong, disciplined, sculpted not just by an athletic past, but by a hard routine. She wears a plain dark grey cleaning uniform, a badge hanging from her chest, and worn sneakers that glide silently across the polished floor. Her straight hair, neatly tucked behind her ear, falls loose with quiet elegance. Her posture is upright, dignified, but she moves like someone who's learned not to draw attention. Zoe finishes cleaning the main mat area with near-ceremonial care, as if every inch were sacred. She's not doing it out of obligation. It's respect. That floor used to be a dream. It used to be part of her. But that is in the past. Suddenly, the sharp sound of a clap echoes through the gym. "Hey!" A sharp, commanding female voice cuts through the room. Zoe turns. Clare Blake is standing at the edge of the mat, arms crossed, hard gaze, her blonde hair pulled into a perfect ponytail. She's wearing designer athletic gear that highlights her sculpted figure from intense training. Her eyes are ice blue. Her expression is arrogant, like her presence alone justifies anything. Zoe lowers her head slightly, trying to stay calm. "Sorry, I thought class hadn't started yet." Claire smirks, spinning slowly on her heels like she's strutting. "This space is for people who train, not for those who clean up our sweat." The comment slices like a razor. A few students turn to watch. One of them, phone in hand, is already recording discreetly. Laughter ripples through the room. A student pretends to slip near Zoe and laughs out loud, as if someone else's pain were entertainment. Zoe stays still. Her eyes don't blink. Her fingers grip the cleaning rag so tightly her knuckles turn white. But she doesn't fire back. She doesn't look up. She doesn't respond. Caleb Smith, the gym's coordinator, watches from a distance. He's 35, dark brown skin, shaved head, broad shoulders. He wears a plain black t-shirt and workout pants. His eyes carry silent history. He stands still, arms crossed, leaning against the glass wall, like someone who's seen too much to be surprised, but still isn't okay with it. The phone camera keeps rolling as Zoe, with calm, dignified, unshaken movements, picks up the bucket and walks off the mat. As she passes Caleb, their eyes meet for a brief moment, just a glance. But there's something there, a silent connection, recognition, and a weight. Caleb doesn't say anything, but his expression shifts, hardens, like something inside him just woke up. That night, the video is already making rounds on social media. The title leaves no room for doubt. Coach humiliates cleaning lady in front of students. Comments pile up. The image of Zoe walking away in silence, holding the rag becomes viral. She becomes a symbol of dignity, of injustice, of resistance. But what no one knows yet is that Zoe Carter has a past that's about to turn everything upside down. When Zoe closed the door of her small apartment in the Atlanta suburbs, she leaned against it for a moment, like she needed something solid behind her. Her eyes were still watery, carrying the weight of the humiliation she'd endured just hours before. Her chest rose and fell slowly, trying to hold back what couldn't be said out loud. The muffled sound of honking from the street barely reached inside. In here, time felt suspended, like the space had learned to survive in silence. The apartment was modest, but arranged with near ritual care. Old second-hand furniture filled the corners with quiet dignity, a bookshelf with self-help and spiritual books, a vase of faded artificial flowers at the center of the table, and a worn sofa covered with a neatly folded grey blanket. In the corner of the living room sat a purple school backpack with dangling keychains and a pair of kids' sneakers with glitter worn off at the toes, traces of her daily life with her daughter Layla. Zoe walked slowly down the narrow hallway to the bedroom. She pushed the door gently, already familiar with the wooden creak. Inside, the soft light from a lamp against the wall glowed almost golden. Layla slept soundly in a twin bed, her curly hair spread on the pillow, arms wrapped around a beat-up teddy bear still very much loved. Zoe knelt beside the bed. She stayed there for a few seconds, just watching her daughter's face, her calm breathing, her untouched innocence. "You're all I have, Layla," she whispered, her voice cracking, barely audible. She got up carefully, trying not to wake her, went to the old wardrobe, pulled out the last drawer that creaked when opened, and took out a brown cardboard box, its sides reinforced with worn-out tape. She set it on the bed and hesitated. Her chest tightened. She took a deep breath and lifted the lid. Inside that box was a past she tried to forget, but that never forgot her. The white G, folded with almost ceremonial precision, still held a faint smell of baby powder and memory. In the inner pocket, still intact, was the embroidery Z Carter in slightly faded red letters. Next to it rested a yellowed photo with wrinkled edges. In it, Zoe stood atop a podium, a gold medal around her neck, arm raised in victory, eyes glowing with pure pride. It was 2012. She was only 19, the rising star of women's jiu-jitsu in Georgia. But that glow faded the moment she pulled out another picture, smaller, almost torn in half. In it, she stood next to a tall white man, neatly groomed beard, wearing a jacket with the State Jiu-Jitsu Federation crest. The coach, the one who, months later, would cross the line between authority and abuse. Zoe shut her eyes tight and held her breath. The memories hit like blunt blows to the mind. The invasive stare, the soft-spoken threats, the complicit silence of fellow coaches, and worst of all, the day she decided to speak up and was crushed was, "You're trying to ruin the career of a respected man just out of vanity?" That's what the board told her. She was benched. He got promoted, won awards, and was never held accountable. With a sharp motion, Zoe shoved the box to the side of the bed. She sat down, elbows resting on her knees, holding her head in her hands. "It's not fair," she muttered through gritted teeth. "I just wanted to fight. I just wanted to be someone." She tried to lie down, turned on her side, staring at the ceiling, but sleep wouldn't come. On the wall, the soft shadow of her sleeping daughter reached her like an invisible shield, and at the same time, like a reminder of what she lost, of what she was forced to leave behind. "I wake up every day for her, but sometimes I don't even know how to keep going." Through the slightly open window, the distant sound of a passing car cut through the silence, like a thin thread tying her to the outside world. And there, in the dark of the room, a raw, old living truth emerged. Since that day, Zoe never fully trusted anyone again, especially not men who approached with kindness, because it was a good man who destroyed everything she was. And even now, with Caleb looking at her like no one ever had, she still didn't know if she could let her guard down. But something was shifting. Deep down, she could feel it. And that, more than any punch, more than any memory, is what scared her the most. The next morning, Zoe arrived at the gym earlier than usual. The air still carried the cool breeze of dawn, and the first rays of sunlight sliced through the gym's massive windows like golden blades of light, cutting across the space with an almost sacred stillness. The gym was still asleep. No footsteps, no orders, no thuds. A rare moment of calm before the controlled chaos of intense training. She ran the cloth across the floor with automatic, repetitive movements, as if trying to clean not just the room, but her own thoughts. Her mind was still spinning with images from the night before. The box open on the bed, the GI, the torn photo, her daughter's face sleeping, clutching the teddy bear. But more than anything, what she couldn't shake from her memory was Caleb's gaze. That steady, calm, and dangerously kind gaze. A look she didn't expect from anyone, least of all a man. Shortly after 8, Zoe was finishing stacking the buckets and cloths in the supply room when she heard firm footsteps echoing down the rubber-lined hallway. She didn't need to look. She knew. It was him. Caleb Smith stopped naturally at the door, arms crossed over his chest. He wore a fitted black t-shirt, athletic shorts, and training shoes. His upright posture gave away his military past, but his gaze, that gaze, still carried something that even time hadn't managed to harden completely. Zoe. His voice was deep, hushed, almost intimate, as if he didn't want anyone else to hear. She turned slowly, trying to keep her expression neutral. The tension in her shoulders was visible. "Good morning, Mr. Smith." "Caleb," he corrected with a half smile, like someone who didn't want formal barriers. She nodded awkwardly, turning back to look at the boxes around her, pretending to search for something. "I saw your movements yesterday, when you slipped or pretended to slip. It was light, precise, controlled." He observed casually, but with intention. "You've trained before, haven't you?" Zoe felt her throat dry. She swallowed hard but didn't answer. Her gaze hardened slightly. It wasn't anger, it was defense. "You don't need to say anything," Caleb added, stepping 2 paces closer. "Just come with me a minute. I want to show you something." Zoe hesitated. Her eyes drifted toward the end of the hallway. The emergency door was there, the exit. It would be easier to return to the stockroom, pretend she hadn't heard, run again. But there was something in his tone. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't pity. It was truth. And Zoe was tired of running from what was true. Without a word, she followed him into one of the gym's auxiliary rooms, a smaller, more secluded space. The floor was covered in light grey mats. The mirrored walls reflected the soft light coming in through a single side window. Punching bags were lined up in the corner, and the smell of rubber mixed with disinfectant gave the room an almost reverent feel. Caleb walked to the center of the mat, untied his shoes, and left them in the corner. He sat back on his heels, as if in front of something greater than himself. A simple gesture, but full of respect. "If you want to, show me a move," he said, without irony. No challenge, just offering space. Zoe stood still, her heart beating too fast. Her body reacted on its own. She knew this flaw, this posture, this proposal, and she felt, all at once, pain. and longing. After a long pause, she untied her laces, took off her shoes, stepped onto the mat slowly, like someone returning to a sanctuary. She sat across from him, mirroring his posture. The silence between them was heavy, almost tangible. Rhythmic breathing filled the empty space. Then Caleb extended his hand. Open. Simple. You don't have to hide. Not here. Not with me. Zoe looked at the hand. The skin at the fingertips, the lines of the palm, the quiet firmness in the gesture. To anyone else, it was just a touch. But to her, it was a leap into the unknown. She extended her fingers, touched his, held on, for a moment, and let go. But the gesture lingered in the air, like a newly built bridge between two cliffs. In the minutes that followed, the training took place. Smooth, technical, respectful. Caleb demonstrated a movement. Zoe corrected with a light touch on the arm, a twist of the wrist, a tilt of the hips. When he tried to apply an armbar, Zoe surprised him with a clean, precise reversal. Caleb landed on his back on the mat, eyes wide, and he laughed. A light laugh, surprised, genuine. You're good, really good. Zoe didn't laugh, but she didn't step back either. She stood calmly and extended her hand. He took it, and there, in that silent second when their eyes met, something began to rebuild. When the training ended, Zoe picked up her towel, adjusted her uniform, and walked to the door. But before leaving, without turning around, she said firmly, "Don't get used to it. I still don't trust you." Caleb didn't respond. He just smiled, subtly, like someone who understands that some battles are worth the wait. The next afternoon, the Blake Performance Center was buzzing with unusual energy. The main hall had been transformed for a special event, a lecture on strength and female empowerment in sports aimed at students, sponsors, and influential figures from Atlanta's athletic elite. Cell phone flashes lit up the room like modern fireflies. Sports influencers smiled for selfies, experienced coaches exchanged formal greetings, and the lights of the makeshift stage glowed under the rising noise of anticipation. The chairs were arranged in a semicircle in front of the small stage. Banners with powerful quotes hung from the glass walls. Strong women lift other women, and strength is identity. The carefully positioned lighting gave the scene a theatrical air. Clare Blake was preparing to take center stage with the same precision she brought into a fight. She adjusted the black belt at her waist over her expensive training pants and checked her reflection in a portable mirror while her assistant tested the presentation slides on the projector. Meanwhile, on the other side of the room, nearly invisible in the shadows between rows of chairs, Zoe Carter was doing what she always did, working in silence. She wore the same dark grey cleaning uniform, disposable gloves on her hands, and a posture so upright it masked her fatigue. She wiped the floor carefully around the chairs, making sure not to disrupt the guests. Some women in the audience watched her with discreet curiosity. An older black woman, elegant posture and white hair wrapped in a lavender turban, leaned slightly and whispered to the friend beside her. "That girl. There's something in her eyes. Strength that doesn't need a voice to make itself known." Zoe heard, smiled with a subtle nod without stopping her work. That kind of silent recognition was the only one she accepted. She avoided other people's eyes. She just wanted to finish and vanish before the lights fully came on. But Claire needed the spotlight, and for that, she needed an audience. She climbed the stage with mic in hand, her blue eyes scanning the crowd with the trained confidence of someone used to being admired. She opened her speech with rehearsed lines. True female strength isn't measured in punches or medals. It's about courage, about consistency. It's about being in control of your own story. Applause rippled through the rows of chairs. Young athletes looked at Claire with admiration in their eyes. The coach continued, now walking slowly across the stage, gesturing lightly, performing each word like part of a choreography. That's when her eyes met Zoe's, who was still quietly cleaning near the edge of the hall, close to the back row. Claire paused for a second, and with a half smile, she leaned slightly into the microphone. "Well, look at that. Seems like we have a special guest here today, cleaning the floor. Want to come up on stage too? Maybe show us how to mop with style." Laughter, some muffled, others uncomfortable. A group of teenagers looked at each other, unsure whether to applaud or feel ashamed. The atmosphere shifted like a rope pulled too tight. Zoe stopped, eyes fixed on the floor for a moment, took a deep breath, gripped the mop handle until her knuckles turned white, and then looked up. For the first time, she didn't look away, and Claire wasn't the only one who noticed. The entire room seemed to freeze for a few seconds. Zoe walked slowly to the center of the circle of chairs. Her steps were firm, but not angry, the cloth still in her hand, the cleaning uniform still stained at the edges. No microphone, no slides, no makeup, just her. She stopped in front of everyone and said in a firm, clear voice, without raising the volume, "I don't need to shout to be heard." The silence was immediate. A heavy silence, as if the oxygen had vanished from the room for a few seconds. The phrase seemed to echo in the banners. Claire kept smiling, but her face tightened. Discomfort seeped through the cracks in her controlled expression. Phones were raised. Some were already recording. Others only now began filming. But the impact was already done. In that moment, the videos began to spread. Among athletes groups, discussion forums, sports pages. On TikTok, the scene already had dramatic music and captions in bold letters. "Cleaning lady shuts down coach with a single sentence." "Who is she? We want to see this woman on the mat." By night, the videos had exploded. Thousands of likes, millions of views. On Twitter, hashtags like #TeamZoe and #VoiceWithoutMic climbed the trending topics. Zoe's phrase was on graphic posts with black backgrounds and golden light. She had become a symbol of silent dignity, of resistance. And for the first time, Zoe Carter saw her name gain space, without needing to ask for permission. But on the other side, Claire felt the stage slowly crumble beneath her feet. The woman who had always been in control was now starting to lose the script, and something inside her, something no amount of training could hide, was beginning to crack. The impact of Zoe's words still echoed through the halls of the Blake Performance Center like a vibration that refused to fade. The video from the lecture, now subtitled, edited, dubbed, and remixed, was spreading like wildfire. Influencers were reacting on video. Feminist blogs quoted her speech. Content creators added music. Even athletes from other states were talking about the cleaning lady who silenced the coach with a single sentence. Her name, which until recently wasn't even listed in the Academy's official records, was now featured on inspiration boards, shown in motivational talk slides, and mentioned in private groups of female athletes as a symbol of resistance and dignity. But as Zoe gained visibility, Claire lost control. The coach, used to calling the shots, felt the pressure piling up like a stack of invisible weights on her shoulders. Students began questioning her methods. Followers sent messages demanding a worthy response. Some, more daring, suggested outright, "Put her on the mat. Let's see who's who." 4 days after the lecture, Claire called the local press for a last-minute news conference, using the excuse of a technique demonstration in honor of the Academy's values. With flawless makeup, a carefully rehearsed smile, and her black belt tied with precision, she stood in front of the cameras, the Academy logo behind her. The audience was a mix of journalists, students, and onlookers. Holding the microphone, she announced, "Since so many were impressed by Miss Carter, I thought Why not turn this moment into something constructive? A friendly challenge, right here. In the heart of our academy, Clare Blake versus Zoe Carter. No rivalry, no drama, just an exchange of experiences between two strong women. Some applauded, hesitantly. Others exchanged skeptical glances. Claire's tone was too sweet, too artificial. To many, it sounded more like provocation than invitation. In the women's locker room, Zoe watched the live stream on her phone, leaning against the sink, still holding a cleaning rag. Beside her, Caleb Smith, arms crossed and expression serious, watched silently. "She's pulling you into her game, and she wants to beat you where she's in charge," he said, his voice low but firm. Zoe didn't take her eyes off the screen. Her face remained calm. "That's not what bothers me," she replied, almost in a whisper. The next day, while cleaning the back area of the gym, Zoe heard a heated argument coming from the cafeteria. She ran there. Camila, one of the cleaning staff, was cornered by one of the academy's administrative assistants. Camila was a short Latina woman, soft-spoken, with dark hair tied in a bun and kind brown eyes. She was silently crying. At her feet, a shattered glass. "You think this is a slum or something?" the assistant shouted, his face red. "There's no room for irresponsible people in here." Zoe crossed the room without hesitation. She stood between them, eyes fixed on the man. She tripped on a loose cord. The floor was wet. "That's not irresponsibility. That's administrative negligence," she said, firm as steel. The assistant clenched his jaw, turned his back, and stormed off. But Camila was already trembling with embarrassment in front of the others. Zoe held her by the shoulders, looking at her gently. "You're not leaving because of this. You're not lowering your head. None of us are." Later, Zoe walked up to the second floor of the gym. Her steps were calm, but deliberate. She knocked twice on the meeting room door. Claire was inside alone, sitting with her legs crossed, feet on the desk, scrolling through her phone distractedly. Zoe entered without waiting for an invitation. "I want to accept your challenge," she said. Claire raised her eyebrows, surprised, then leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table with a crooked smile. "Are you really ready to embarrass yourself in front of everyone?" she teased. Zoe didn't blink, didn't hesitate. "On one condition." Her voice was sharp and clear. "If I win, you'll publicly apologize to every cleaning worker, every cafe worker, every maintenance worker, out loud, in front of everyone." Claire's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but she quickly regained her composure. "Deal," she replied, extending her hand with theatrical flair. Zoe stepped forward and shook the coach's hand firmly, without blinking, without looking away. And in that handshake, there was more than an agreement. There were centuries of silencing being renegotiated. That same night, the Academy's official profile posted the announcement in bold letters: Clare Blake vs. Zoe Carter, live challenge date set, stream confirmed. Zoe would return to the mat, but not for applause, not for fame. She would return, for all those who had always been invisible. And now, the whole world would be watching. The day of the match arrived like a forecasted storm, not with thunder, but with anxious stares, nervous fingers on screens, and cameras pointed at the unexpected. Since sunrise, the area around the Blake Performance Center had been buzzing. The parking lot, usually empty on Saturday mornings, was now packed with news vans, makeshift food trucks, uniformed students, and visitors from all over Atlanta. Inside the gym, the main hall had been transformed into a spectacle arena. Blue and red mats covered the floor like colors of war. Banners with phrases about overcoming obstacles decorated the walls. A large screen displayed a real-time broadcast of the match on Instagram, YouTube, and a regional sports platform. In the lower corner of the screen, white letters on a black background read, "Clare Blake versus Zoe Carter, live." In the back prep room, Zoe adjusted her hair in front of a foggy mirror. Her straight hair was pulled back simply but securely. The white gi she wore was clean and modest, with the sleeves rolled up to the elbows. On her chest, embroidered in faded red thread from time, Z. Carter. Her light brown eyes reflected focus and silence. Caleb stood against the wall, watching her with respect. There was no aura of a coach. It was something more intimate. The presence of someone who knows pain without needing it, explained. "Remember," he said, his voice deep and low. "You're not walking out there for her. You're going for you, for Camilla, for Layla, for everything they tried to erase." Zoe took a deep breath and looked at her reflection. "I'm not here to win," she answered. "I'm here to show they didn't break me." In the locker room on the other side of the building, Claire put on her black gi with gold accents and a custom embroidery on the back. Her expression was rehearsed, calculated. She applied a light layer of foundation to her face, adjusted her hair into a flawless ponytail, while her assistant updated her on the stream numbers. "How many live now?" she asked. 47,000. And climbing." Claire smiled without showing her teeth. "Perfect. The bigger the crowd, the harder her fall." Minutes later, both appeared before the crowd. Zoe entered first, in silence. Firm steps, head held high, eyes locked on the center of the mat. No gestures to the crowd, no waving, just presence. Claire followed next, waving like a celebrity, receiving applause and cheers. She smiled for the cameras as if walking a red carpet. The referee, a former state jiu-jitsu champion, called them to the center of the mat. He explained the basic rules. Claire barely listened, her eyes distracted by the flashes. Zoe, on the other hand, listened to every word with reverence, like someone who respects the fight, the space, and the weight of the moment. With a sharp gesture, the referee started the match. Claire moved in immediately. Quick movements, confident posture. She went for a direct grip on Zoe's arm. But Zoe turned smoothly, slipping away like air through fingers. The crowd reacted with a murmur of surprise. Claire kept pushing. Tried another attack. Zoe blocked with her forearm, rotated at the hips, and with a clean, precise movement, applied a lever that dropped Claire flat on her back. The sound of the impact was sharp, like splitting wood, and for a second, there was total silence. Claire jumped up, now visibly angry, her face red, eyes blazing. She went for a desperate attack, but Zoe anticipated the move. She used Claire's own momentum against her, spun her hips, and executed a classic throw with almost choreographed perfection. Claire fell again, and before she could rise, Zoe had already pinned her, one knee pressing down on her torso and a firm hold on her shoulders. She didn't yell, didn't smile, didn't raise her arms. She just stayed there, in silence, with Claire trapped beneath her. Not with violence, but with complete technical control. "Enough!" the referee announced, raising Zoe's hand. "Clear submission." 2 seconds later, the gym erupted. Applause, cheers, shaking cameras, muffled sobs. Influencers live streaming. The internet in a frenzy. Hashtags started popping up across social media. #Zoe Carter, unbeatable. Cleaner, #humility, is strength. The fall of Claire. Within minutes, celebrities were reposting clips of the match. Zoe had become the symbol of quiet resistance, the everyday woman who carried her dignity like a shield. Claire remained seated on the mat, eyes blank, face sweaty, and stunned. For the first time, she tasted the sting of public humiliation, but not from scandal or shouting, from silence, from truth, from skill. Zoe approached, held out her hand. Claire hesitated. Her eyes welled up, but she took the offered hand. Rose slowly. The match was over. But what began there was something far greater than any medal. It was the beginning of a new era, and Zoe was ready to step into it. The day after the match, Zoe woke to her phone buzzing on the nightstand. The screen lit up non-stop, flooded with notifications that seemed endless, over 200 unread messages, invitations for interviews on major podcasts, local news outlets, even national TV networks. Verified profiles were tagging her in short videos with headlines like "The Cleaning Lady Who Became a Legend" and "The Woman Who Silenced the Elite with Skill and Silence." Her face now appeared on news portals, labeled as the symbol of a new generation. Big-name sports brands were sending sponsorship offers by email. A well-known producer was inviting her to be part of a reality show about inspiring women. A respected fightwear company wanted to launch a custom line in her name. But Zoe simply turned the phone off and placed it face down on the table, silencing the noise of the outside world. She put on the same dark grey cleaning uniform, returned to the quiet routine at the gym, cleaning mats, sweeping hallways, avoiding curious stares. She ignored messages, politely declined interview requests. The cameras that occasionally caught her leaving work only saw a serious, tired face. No smiles, no statements. Caleb watched it all from afar. He noticed Zoe was there physically, but her eyes were somewhere else, as if searching for something lost. At night, the humble neighborhood where Zoe lived looked even darker than usual. The street lamp flickered weakly, casting the road into near darkness. Caleb parked near the old building, climbed the concrete steps with steady determination, trying to find the right words. He knocked twice on the worn door. Zoe took a while to answer. When she finally did, her face showed signs of fatigue, her hair tied in a messy bun, wearing a loose t-shirt and worn sweatpants. Her brown eyes, usually firm, now held a deep, almost painful shadow. She said nothing, just stepped aside, slowly and resigned, to let him in. The room was dimly lit by a yellow light from the kitchen, creating a melancholic atmosphere. On the floor, between makeshift pillows and a thin blanket, Layla slept deeply, clutching her old teddy bear. The girl's peaceful face contrasted with her mother's tired eyes. Zoe sat cross-legged on the floor beside her, hands folded in her lap. Caleb approached quietly, sensing the weight of the space. With a low voice, almost a whisper, he said, "You disappeared." Zoe didn't respond. The silence lasted long seconds, broken only by the calm breathing of the sleeping child. Then, in a fragile tone, Zoe finally spoke. "I wasn't made for this, Caleb. All this attention, this spotlight. I don't want to become a product of social media." He took a deep breath, gently watching her hands as they tucked the blanket around Layla, shielding her from the cold, slipping in through the window crack. "Zoe, you became a symbol of strength to so many people, including her." Caleb nodded toward the child, asleep and unaware. Zoe kept her eyes on the floor, avoiding his gaze. Her voice came out low, almost like a painful sigh. "The last time I trusted someone, I lost everything. My career, my faith in people. I almost lost who I was." Caleb didn't respond right away. He just sat down on the floor beside her, letting the silence settle between them like a safe place, where words weren't needed to understand one another. Time seemed to slow down, and the quiet brought no discomfort, only connection. After a moment, softly, he said only, "Then trust me, just a little." Zoe slowly turned to face him. Her brown eyes were glassy, shining with tears held back far too long. They weren't tears of pain or sadness. They were of relief, of finally allowed vulnerability. With a small, almost shy movement, she rested her head on his shoulder, not like someone giving up, not like someone surrendering, but like someone who had finally found safe harbor, a place where she didn't need to fight or run. For the first time in a long time, Zoe allowed herself to trust, and she felt like she could rest, even if just for that night. The next morning, the sky over Atlanta was blanketed by a thick layer of grey clouds, as if announcing something different on the horizon. It wasn't the sign of a storm, but of a quiet, inevitable transformation. Zoe swept slowly outside the modest building where she lived, still wearing the dark grey uniform, now wrinkled from a restless night. Her thoughts drifted uncertainly, back and forth like the dry leaves rolling down the street, carried by the light wind. Since the match, the city seemed to be watching her closely, waiting for her next move. But no one could have predicted who would show up on that grey morning. A sleek black car slowly turned onto the quiet street, pulling up just in front of her. Zoe looked up, her fingers tightening slightly around the broom handle. She recognized the vehicle the moment the door opened. Clare Blake stepped out slowly, with hesitant steps. No makeup on her face, no polished uniform or crowd around her. She wore an oversized light grey hoodie and simple athletic pants. Her blonde hair was down, resting on her shoulders, something rare for someone who always presented herself with rigid perfection. Her eyes, usually ice-cold, now held a different weight, something vulnerable, tired. Zoe turned slowly to face her, keeping the broom steady in her hands. Her voice came out calm but guarded. "If you came to provoke me again, you're wasting your time." Claire stopped a few steps away, keeping a respectful distance but not breaking eye contact. For the first time, her tone held no hint of sarcasm or arrogance. "I just want to talk, that's all." Zoe hesitated briefly, studying Claire's face carefully. With a small nod, she gestured to the side steps of the building, where they could sit in private. Both sat on the worn concrete step, letting the silence sit between them for several seconds. Claire finally spoke, eyes fixed on the ground, with a disarming honesty. "My father trained you. I know that." Zoe simply nodded, keeping her gaze down. "He trained me too," Claire continued, releasing a bitter sigh. "But with me, it was different. It was never physical, it was psychological. Every day he convinced me I'd never be strong enough, that to be a winner, I had to be hard, ruthless. Women who feel too much, who cry, who break, were useless." A bitter smile appeared on her lips, almost a reflex of old pain. "I grew up believing that feeling anything was weakness. When you showed up back then, full of talent, he wouldn't stop comparing me to you. He said you had grit, that you were the kind of woman who didn't need anyone. And then, in the blink of an eye, he erased you, like you never existed. And I never questioned it. I just accepted it." Zoe turned slightly toward Claire, eyes misty, the weight of the words sinking in. Her voice came out low, but filled with restrained emotion. "You became exactly what he wanted, and I became what he threw away." "Yes," Claire replied with difficulty, a knot tightening in her throat. "But now I see. Neither of us deserved that." A deep silence returned between them, but now something was being rebuilt slowly, a fragile, delicate bridge between two seemingly irreconcilable worlds. After a long pause, Claire took a deep breath and, looking directly at Zoe, said firmly, I wanted to say, I'm sorry for everything, for being part of the machine that tried to crush you, for treating you like you were invisible. You never were. Zoe stayed quiet, absorbing every word. She didn't answer right away, but the tension in her face softened slowly. For the first time, she didn't look away, and that alone said more than words ever could. Later that same day, Caleb showed up unexpectedly in the late afternoon. He wore dark jeans and a neatly pressed light blue shirt, holding with some care a small bouquet full of colorful flowers, daisies, lavender, and sunflowers, all carefully wrapped in clear paper. He knocked on the door gently with his elbow, trying to keep his balance. Zoe opened the door and slightly furrowed her brow, surprised to see him. "They're for Layla," he said with a shy, almost embarrassed smile. "I figured she deserved flowers to celebrate this new chapter in her mom's life." Zoe couldn't help but smile. It came naturally to her face. Before she could respond, Layla came running from the living room, her tiny braids bouncing, wearing a t-shirt with a bright rainbow print that sparkled under the dim hallway light. "Flowers? For me?" the girl exclaimed, delighted. "For you," Caleb replied, kneeling down in front of her to hand her the bouquet. Layla jumped into his arms with pure joy, hugging him tightly. Zoe watched the scene from the doorway, her eyes shining with emotion. For the first time, she didn't look away or try to hide what she felt. In that simple and precious moment, there was no more need to hide anything. Not her daughter, not her pain, not who she really was. For the first time in a long while, Zoe felt whole. Finally, she wasn't afraid of being seen exactly as she was. Days later, a new energy took over the neighborhood where Zoe lived. An old concrete court, once abandoned, was now being transformed. Hand-painted panels, new mats arriving, curious girls watching through the gates. It was the beginning of something bigger. Something that had nothing to do with fame, sponsorships, or likes, but with real transformation. The project had a name: Invisible Strength. Zoe, with Caleb's help, organized everything using the resources she had turned down from the big brands. While others saw an opportunity to profit from her image, she chose to give back to the community what had once been denied to her: protection, strength, and guidance. Caleb handled the structure, safety, and connections with local non-profits. Zoe prepared the training, welcomed the girls, and spoke with the mothers. Layla joined every session, running between the mats with joy. On the afternoon of the grand opening, the court was full. Local news cameras, yes, but also neighbors, students, single mothers, curious teenagers, and faces Zoe had seen before in the background of the gym, sweeping floors or scrubbing bathrooms. The ceremony was simple, but symbolic. Zoe stepped up to the small stage built from painted boards and picked up the microphone. She wore her white gi again, the same one from before, now tailored to fit her better. On her chest, the embroidered name stood firm: Zoe Carter. But she was no longer the athlete who had lost everything, nor just the woman who won a match on the mat. Now, she was a teacher, a mother, and loved. I dedicate this space to every woman who was ever called weak, to those who were ignored when they asked for help, and to those who learned to stand back up, even when no one offered them a hand. Her words were followed by loud, heartfelt applause. But Zoe didn't cry. She was whole. When she stepped off the stage, Caleb was waiting for her in the crowd, with a look that said it all. He held her hand firmly, casually, and gently pulled her close. Then, in a soft voice, almost in her ear, he said, "If you ever want, I'd be willing to stay in this fight with you forever." Zoe looked at him with that quiet smile she always tried to hide. But in that moment, there was nothing left to hide. She brushed his face gently with her hand and answered with just one gesture. The kiss happened in the middle of the court, in front of everyone. A kiss without rush, without performance. A kiss that said, "I trust you now." Applause erupted all around. Cheers, playful squeals from the girls. Even Layla clapped and shouted, "I know it!" Zoe smiled in the middle of the tight hug Caleb gave her. It was official. The woman the world tried to erase had just begun again. The response to the Invisible Strength Project's opening was bigger than anyone expected. The video of Zoe's speech spread across TV channels, digital platforms, and community groups throughout the country. But what stood out most wasn't the project's structure or even the final kiss. It was her gaze, steady, human, healed. The following week, a news team from Atlanta's biggest network visited the center to record a special story about women transforming their communities. The place was already full of life: kids training, women smiling, teenagers holding gloves with a sparkle in their eyes. But everything revolved around one central figure, Zoe Carter. Wearing her white G, now with a patch embroidered with the project's logo, she walked among the students with ease, with no need to appear above anyone. When the journalist approached her for the main interview, Zoe hesitated for a second. But then she saw Layla, sitting in the bleachers, laughing with other kids. She saw Caleb, helping one of the girls adjust her mouthguard. And she saw Claire, sitting at the side of the mat, organizing papers and doing something she never used to do: listening. The reporter held the microphone in front of her, and the camera turned on. Zoe looked straight into the lens. The reporter asked, "Zoe, what does strength mean to you?" Zoe took a deep breath. Her voice came out steady, calm, and full of truth. Strength isn't about knocking anyone down. It's getting up every day, even when you're hurt. It's still believing in love, even when everything told you to stop. The crew fell silent. The cameraman slowly pulled back the lens. The final image of the report was a drawing Layla had made, taped to the wall. 3 figures holding hands. A woman with long hair, a tall man with a wide smile, and a little girl with braids. Underneath, in colorful letters, "My family." The segment ended with a real image. Layla sitting in Zoe's lap, Caleb beside them, the 3 smiling like people who know they finally belong. Behind them, on the entrance of the newly renamed Zoe Carter Self-Defense Center, a new carved wooden sign read, "Here, every woman is trained to never lower her head or her heart." The camera pulled away and captured the reflection of the sunset hitting the front of the building. The spotlight wasn't on the stage anymore. It was in the scars that now didn't hurt anymore. Now tell me, what did you think of this story? Leave your rating in the comments from 0 to 10. I really want to know how much it touched you. If you liked it, don't forget to like, share it with someone who needs to hear this message. And of course, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories. And before you go, I've picked out another touching story that will speak to your heart even more. It's right here next to you. Click on it, and let's go together.